So there might just be a little screen that's come up to um, show you that you can accept the recording. Okay. So as I advertised, this talk is around grief and loss and really kind of turning it on its head. So we have these ideas about what normal grief and loss would look like. And I mean, I'm talking about any sort of loss that we experience during our lives because we have losses right from when we're quite young. We lose pets, we lose grandparents, we lose, anyone that's close to us. But also we lose things like jobs or our health or close friends. So, yeah, I kind of want to give you a little bit of a different perspective on how to deal with grief and loss. Now, many of you will have heard of the theorist Elisabeth Kübler-Ross, and she and another person, Bowlby, describe grief in terms of stages or phases that people go through. And Kübler-Ross is famously renowned for her 5 stages of grief. First one being denial, when a person actually denies that the loss has actually occurred. Then anger, getting angry with the situation that you're faced with. Bargaining, leading on to depression, and then finally into acceptance. And certainly over my nursing career, it was hard to see everybody that, when people were experiencing grief, that they actually flowed through these 5 stages quite as simply as she has put it here. And so that kind of always got me thinking about the fact, well, do we seesaw in between these stages, or are these stages actually even a thing? So this led me on to the fact that this author, Hall, said that stage theories have a certain seductive appeal because they bring a sense of conceptual order to actually a really, really complex process. And they offer the emotional promised land of recovery and closure at the end with that term acceptance, that we're all going to get to this magical stage of acceptance. However, do we all get there, or do we just get more comfortable with living with the pain of losing someone or something? It was always a question that I kept in the back of my mind. So some of the more recent thoughts and theories have emerged that describe grief in terms of processes or tasks. And so I've got 2 of the best known ones here just to show you. So there's a noteworthy theory called the dual process model of Stroebe and Schut. And then there's the task-based model, which was developed by Worden in 2008. Now, the dual process model actually describes grief in terms of oscillation between 2 contrasting modes that vary enormously from one moment to another, and from one individual or cultural group to another. And having been a nurse for a number of years, I've often seen a lot of other cultural groups really processing grief in a much different way to my own culture. So there's the loss orientation, which involves emotion-focused coping, exploring and expressing the full range of emotional reactions to loss. And this is something that some cultures will really struggle with. And then there's the restoration orientation, and this involves problem-focused coping, or dealing with external adjustments required by the loss and ongoing life demands. So life doesn't necessarily stop when we lose someone or something. And so having the concept of being able to express a full range of emotions to that is not easy for all of us to actually live through or experience or want others around us to necessarily see. Yet we do have to carry on with our lives. And sometimes this can be a really, really difficult thing for a lot of us to do and experience. In the task-based model, it actually conceptualizes grieving in terms of 4 ongoing tasks. So accepting the reality of the loss, again, processing the emotional, spiritual, and psychological pain of grieving, adjusting to a new life without the deceased or without the thing that you've lost, and forging a psychological connection with the deceased even while building a new life. Now, this is a little bit different because it's looking at actually still having a connection with the person that's not there. And this can be a very, very soothing and probably one of the less commonly shared sides of dealing with grief, and something that I'm going to talk about a little bit further on. So when you move beyond the stages of grief theories, you get to realize that grieving is not stage-like. It's not sequential, it's not orderly, and it's not predictable. It certainly can be all of those not words there. It can be the opposite of all those things. Bereaved people do not and should not expect to go through a set pattern of specific reactions. It's just not the way that we're made up. And yet, having the theories like Elisabeth Kübler-Ross is expecting to go through all those stages in a very sequential way is actually not how we work. And grief can involve complex, fluctuating emotional reactions, sometimes experienced as a roller coaster. And if any of you have been through grief, you'll know that that whole emotional experience of going through your grieving process does sometimes feel like a really rough roller coaster ride. Lots of ebbs and flows and lots of highs and then lots of lows as well. And so to me, that this whole fact that grief is a lot more complex made a lot of sense. And there's different patterns of normal as well as complicated ways of grieving. Patterns vary greatly in terms of specific reactions, time-related changes, and duration of acute grieving periods. So we really can't put any time frames on any person as to how they're going to move through this. It'll be absolutely done at their own pace. And there are large individual and cultural differences in reactions to loss. And there's actually no sound scientific basis for Kübler-Ross's stages. So really having a think about these theoretical models the aim was to understand and try to explain the grieving process, not to be prescriptive about what people have to go through. There are alternative scientific perspectives that better represent the course of grief and grieving. So looking at healthy grieving, most bereaved people adjust to their loss in their own manner, not through stages, more just over the course of time. It's wrong to expect bereaved people go through stages of grief in order to adapt. And not experiencing stages does not mean that grieving is running a complicated course. Most people do fine with their own informal support networks or their own resources. Placing expectations on bereaved people about needing to experience stages of grief can be harmful. So I guess, if you're working with people or you're around people that have experienced grief, being able to be there and actually just often sit with a person is exactly what they'll need. They'll need someone that they can share their experiences with, that they can talk about the person or the thing that they've lost, and really being open and receptive without passing any judgments about what we perceive healthy grieving as. So, now that we've got that sort of theoretical stuff out of the way, what can you actually do for yourself as you work through a grieving experience? Now, recently I completed a course using acceptance and commitment therapy in relation to grief and loss. Now, if any of you have heard me talk before, or if you have heard me or have been worked with me, you'll know that I use acceptance and commitment therapy as one of the foundations of my supervision and coaching practice. And so doing this extra course on learning about ACT for grief and loss has sort of opened up a new avenue as such for me to explore, to work with people and help them through these experiences. And what in ACT, Russ Harris, who is the person that teaches ACT, talks about building self-compassion. I'm a big believer that we're often the harshest on ourselves. And so by building self-compassion, we're able to actually become a lot more resilient and learn to care for ourselves in a lot better way. If that makes sense. So the first of these 6 building blocks is actually acknowledging the pain that you're experiencing. So we consciously and intentionally notice and acknowledge our own pain. Or if we're working with someone, then perhaps we sit with them and we allow them the time to do this. We notice with openness and curiosity the painful thoughts, feelings, emotions, images, sensations, urges, memories that are present with us in this moment. This is very different from our default mode. The default mode is that we turn away from pain as fast as possible. We try to suppress it, avoid it, deny it, escape it, or distract from it. And we actually use lots of different means to do this. We use things like I call buffering techniques. So we'll drink, maybe overeat, do painful things to ourselves, just really try and create a world where we don't have to suffer that feeling of pain, because it's not something that we like to do. So what I'm saying here is that in order to help yourself through a process like this, is that you will consciously and intentionally notice that pain. And the way you do that is by saying to yourself, I'm noticing painful feelings of rejection. So maybe someone's left you, or you've had a bad breakup, or you've lost your job. Or I'm noticing thoughts about being a loser, or I'm noticing sadness and anxiety. And this is a way of actually allowing yourself to really get in and experience that emotion. And it won't be comfortable. However, by doing this and by becoming consciously aware, actually allowing yourself to really experience this pain. And then we have diffusion from self-judgment. So learning to separate, unhook, or detach from our thoughts and beliefs and see them for what they are. They're nothing more or less than strings of words and pictures. So this is saying that any of those self-judging thoughts that are coming through your head, whether they're the thoughts that are beating you up, whether they're telling you things that are harsh, especially with harsh self-talk, that you can actually notice them as being thoughts, name them, and then unhook from those thoughts. Because once you get hooked by those thoughts, they tend to take you down a really dark rabbit hole because you're actually fusing with those thoughts that your brain or your mind is telling you, and they're simply not true. They're really just your thoughts and beliefs that are swimming around in your mind. And then thirdly, we've got acting with kindness. So values are our heart's deepest desires for how we want to behave on an ongoing basis, how we want to treat ourselves, others, and the world around us. Now, committed action is another real ACT term. So values and committed action are definitely the way forward if you're wanting to make changes into your life. And committed action means skillful, flexible action guided by our core values. And the value that forms the foundation of self-compassion is kindness. So all types of self-compassion practice, wherever they may have originated from, revolve around this powerful core value of kindness. So being kind to yourself, and as I said in the previous slide, about separating yourself from that real self-judgment or self-derogatory talk is certainly one of the ways to act with a lot more kindness with yourself. And then fourthly, we've got acceptance. So accepting our thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, urges, sensations. So acceptance means that we actually open up and make room for our thoughts and feelings. We allow them to flow through us without fighting them, without running away from them, and without being controlled by them. So this is a little bit different than saying in Elisabeth Kübler-Ross's model where you've got acceptance right at the end. This isn't about accepting the grief. This is about accepting your thoughts and feelings and emotions and actually enabling you to sit with them and allow them to flow through you. And fifthly, we've got validation. So all too often, when you're feeling or you're in great pain, we invalidate our own emotional experience. We don't acknowledge our pain as a valid experience. We don't acknowledge it as a normal and natural part of being human. One aspect of validating is diffusion. And even though we can't stop our thoughts from arising, we can actually learn to diffuse, or if you want to say unhook or detach from these harsh thoughts or self-judgments or the unrealistic expectations and the unkind comparisons to others. The other aspect is to actively validate our experience through self-talk. We can remind ourselves in a warm, caring inner voice rather than the harsh critic that it's normal and natural for humans to have painful thoughts and feelings when life is difficult. That is a completely normal way of being. And often when I'm working with my clients, I'll say, if you were in the real world, we sort of have a balance of 50-50 of thoughts, 50% positive, 50% negative. And yet a lot of us are really striving to always have this real happy, outgoing persona. But then, you're not making time in your lives to have those feelings that aren't quite so comfortable. And they're actually okay because they're very much a part of us. And then connectedness, lastly. So often when we're in great pain, our minds generate thoughts along the lines of, I'm the only one going through this. I'm the only one who feels this way. No one else knows what it's like. No one cares. Everyone else is happy. Everyone else is better off than me. Why me? And so on. And we kind of get hooked into this whole way of thinking. If, on the other hand, we develop a sense of connectedness with others, this can help us with our pain. And one way to help develop such connectedness is to actually diffuse or unhook from our thoughts. A second way is to spend time with people who care about you and treat you kindly and actively engage with them, be fully present with them. Often it's useful to let these people know that you're in pain and to accept their kindness, which will usually rapidly follow your disclosure. And a third way is to actively think about your pain as something that you have in common with all human beings. The saying is, if you love something hard enough, then there's often going to be pain at the other end. And so without love, you kind of can't have pain. And this whole conception that we, to actually feel deeply, we need to experience a balance of those emotions. So your pain is not a sign of weakness or defectiveness or mental illness. It's a sign that you're a living, caring human being. It's something that you have in common with every living, caring human being on the planet. So looking now at self-compassion in small steps, so we can work on self-compassion in baby steps so it's not threatening or overwhelming or too hard, because our brain is certainly going to try and put up some barriers to tell us that it's too hard to do this. We can start with any one of the 6 elements mentioned before, whichever we find easiest, and work on that for a little while. And once you've made some progress with that element, then we can start experimenting with another. And in this way, going gently, step by step, we can build our self-compassion skills over time. However, there are some barriers to self-compassion. And these 5 barriers here are what might stop you actually fully being able to work with yourself in developing self-compassion. So you might fuse with your unworthiness. Now, this is where it gets tricky because these thoughts are just what's coming up in your head. Okay, and you're fusing with them, you're believing them, and you're sending yourself down into this little dark place. And yet, by learning to experience them and unhook from them, you can actually overcome this barrier. You don't want to experience those overwhelming emotions that just feel too painful for you to actually experience. You might get the feeling that this is pointless, that this is actually just not something that I want to try. This is just not my thing. Having the feeling of lack of personal experience. This is not something that you've tried before, that you're not willing to give it a go. and also the prejudice. And this prejudice actually comes from within you. Because often once you open up to someone else, the prejudice is something that you're holding on to. It's not something that they have ever thought about. So yeah, common barriers to self-compassion can get in the way and worth actually thinking about. Now this is a Heliflex, which comes from ACT. And this is just putting those all those concepts that I've spoken about into a diagram to make it easier for you to see. So, acknowledging your pain, to coming into the present moment with that pain, using kindness in your values, using kind words and actions, which is your committed action, using yourself or common humanity, which is again involves kindness, unhooking from that self-judgment, diffusion from those thoughts that are dragging you down, and then opening up to experience a full range of emotions. And then in the middle there is your self-compassion, which gives you that psychological flexibility. So contacting the present moment, just to explain this a little bit further, it means to be flexibly bringing our awareness to either the physical world around us or the psychological world within us, or to both simultaneously. It also means consciously paying attention to our here and now experience instead of drifting off into our thoughts or operating on autopilot. And contacting the present moment is a mindfulness skill. So it's being able to bring yourself back into the present moment. And I work with a lot of people to take them through a process called dropping the anchor, which is actually when you push both your feet into the ground and you consciously re-center yourself back into your body. By pushing your feet down, you're consciously, physically doing something and bringing yourself back into your breath. So, becoming aware of your breathing and becoming aware of your physical body. And what you do then is that you open up your eyes again and look at what's around you. I'm still here. My plant's still here. Those things around me are still here. So that's when, if you feel like your thoughts are taking you off down into all sorts of directions that you don't want to go, then by anchoring yourself back in, dropping the anchor, pushing your feet into the floor, getting yourself back into your body, doing a couple of breaths, you're coming back into the moment. It's a very, very good tool to use. And then we've got diffusion. So watching your thinking. So diffusion means learning to step back and separate or detach from our thoughts, images, or memories that are going around inside our head. So instead of getting caught up in our thoughts or being pushed around by them, we let them come and go as if they were just cars driving past outside our house. And so you can actually imagine, if you close your eyes, that if you've got thoughts in your head, that you can actually pop them on a car, or you can use the metaphor like putting them on a cloud and watching them float on by. Those are when your thoughts are starting to actually really trouble you, or taking you down into places that you don't want to go. You can do this whole diffusion technique, which is actually just detaching yourself from those thoughts. And then I've got acceptance here. So acceptance means opening up and making room for those painful feelings, sensations, urges, and emotions. And that's what I spoke about a little bit earlier on, is that we tend to not really want to experience that pain that comes with the sadness or the loss or whatever that has happened for us. We just really want to push it down and not deal with it. And if we drop the struggle with them and give them some breathing space and allow them to be as they are, it allows us to actually open up and to truly experience those feelings rather than pushing them away or buffering them away by other techniques. And then the self is context. So in everyday language, we talk about the mind without recognizing that there are two distinct elements to it. You've got the thinking self and you've got the observing self. So what this is telling you is that you have a thinking self that creates all your thoughts. However, you have another aspect to yourself that you can actually be conscious of what you're thinking. So this is where the observing self comes in. Some people might refer to it more as self-awareness. So being a little bit more aware of your thoughts and noticing them, naming them, and then actually normalizing them is kind of taking you from that thinking self into the observing self, because you've enabled yourself to actually notice what your thoughts are. And your thoughts are not you. They are just purely thoughts. We have about 40 to 60,000 thoughts going through our mind every day. And only a few of those will really hook you in, unless you're going through a really traumatic experience where you might just really dwell on something and ruminate over it for a long time. So being aware that they are just thoughts and that you can diffuse from them, and you can have your thinking self and your observing self. And then the values again. So deep in your heart, what do you want your life to be about? What do you want to stand for? What do you want to do with your brief time on this planet? What truly matters to you in the big picture? We commonly compare values to a compass because they give us direction and they guide our ongoing journey. So I often ask people what really matters to them most. What do they dream about? What do they want to be doing in 5 years' time? All those things that allow them to see that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that if you are being kind to yourself and if you're allowing yourself to really experience these emotions, that you will get through this. And then the committed action. So really it means taking effective action guided by what's most important to you, which is your values. And it means doing what it takes to live by our values, even if that brings up some pain and discomfort for you. So just moving on, there's just a few things that I thought I'd take you through that are ways for you to actually deal with loss and grief. And this here, this was as a practice for acknowledging loss, or if you want to call it like a grief ritual. And these are some of the things that processes that you can work through or set up as a ritual to help you experience this grief in a different way. So Russ Harris suggests a regular time and place for you to do this. Perhaps a strong reminder of the person that you have lost, or whatever you've lost. Maybe a symbolic act. So some other notes here. So maybe it's something that you did with this person, or it's something that do something that symbolizes your love for this person. Maybe it's lighting a candle. Maybe it's like laying flowers on a grave, playing special music, reading a poem, praying, or journaling. The strong reminder, just going back to that, is something present that strongly reminds you of your loved one. This can be a photograph or painting or an item of clothing. Remembering and allowing. During this time, remember your loved one and allow your feelings to be as they are. Make room for all your thoughts and feelings, love and sadness, joy and fear, laughter and loneliness. Acknowledge how much it hurts and treat yourself kindly. Many people find it soothing to practice the kind hand exercises or other self-compassion exercises. Now, I'll actually run through a kind hands exercise with you soon. And remember that unwanted memories may appear. And if this happens, it's important that you don't push them away, because doing so usually results in a rebound effect. The unwanted memories disappear briefly, then bounce back with a vengeance. So if an unwanted memory shows up, notice it, name it, and allow it, and hold yourself kindly. Choosing memories, we have little control over our memories. They come and go as they please. Often they appear when you don't want them. At other times, we can't retrieve them. So no matter how hard we try. However, during a grief ritual, you can choose to focus on memories that you want to hold dear. Consider how you want to remember this person. Were there particular occasions or events that were really special? Things they said or did that really mattered to you? Quirks of their personality you found endearing? Personal qualities you admired? And if so, you may like to consciously relive and reflect on those beautiful moments and savor the sweetness within them. And then lastly here, I've got talking with your loved ones. And some of you may think this is a little bit odd, but many people find it useful to talk to their loved one. If you've never done this, it might sound odd because your loved one is dead. Yet these imaginary conversations are often very healing. If you want to experiment with this, you may choose to speak aloud or in your head. You may like to talk to your loved one about old times and tell them things you wished you said, or keep them informed of what's happening now in your life. And if you wish, you can imagine them talking back to you. So these are just little rituals that I think possibly may have been part of our lives in an earlier time, and that we have lost these in our more modern society. And I think that being able to experience these is actually something quite nice to remember that lost loved one. I'm just going to take you through an example, which might seem like it's a little bit sad, but it does sort of demonstrate how these rituals can work. So a couple created a practice where once a week they'd go into their baby Sophia's bedroom and stand in front of her crib and hold hands. They'd light a candle, play music, and share with each other their fondest memories of their beautiful baby girl. And usually they'd end up sobbing and hugging each other tightly. So what that shows is that they were happy to actually set up, a regular time and place and do a symbolic act to remember their little lost child. So yeah, so something for you to think about. Maybe I know that I've found with youth suicide, there seems to be a bit of a pushback about practicing rituals with acknowledging the loss, and wondering if it might be an appropriate thing for the people that are around them to actually experience some of this. The connect and reflect exercise actually involves thinking about someone you care about and reflecting on what you'd like to do together. And again, this is another act exercise which allows you to spend some time connecting and reflecting with the person, and allowing that to be quite a normal experience. Another really good act technique as well. I won't run through that. Now, one of the things that we tend to do when we're going through a difficult time in our lives is that we ruminate, worry, or obsess. So when you keep worrying, ruminating, or obsessing, there's actually a really useful technique called dipping in and out of the river. It's actually a repetitive exercise that you do, and I'll just run through a little bit with you. So what happens is that when someone is worrying or ruminating or obsessing, the idea here is that you learn when this is happening And it's the experiences that you learn how to recognize when you've fallen into the river and how to get yourself back out of it. So basically, the idea is that you start worrying now as much as you can, and you get really caught up in it. And then every 20 seconds, you press pause and you're able to stop and you're able to drop the anchor and look around the room and realize that you're actually still here and you're still in your body and your body's still doing exactly the same thing. And what it does is that you can keep doing this. And certainly in a therapy situation, they would suggest that you practice doing this at home by yourself. And you can practice 3 to 4 minutes twice a day. You find a quiet space to sit down, you set a timer. So you allow yourself to start worrying and ruminating. And every 20 seconds, you pause, you notice your thoughts, you have a stretch, you engage with the world, and then you reset for another 20 seconds. And throughout the day, whenever you find yourself swimming in that river or going down that river with those thoughts, is that you press pause and you take at least 10 seconds to stretch and look around and get a sense of where you are and what you're doing, and then make a choice. Will you jump back into the river or will you focus on something else? So what this is really teaching you is that you can disrupt your thoughts, that you don't have to go down those river of thoughts and just keep obsessing, worrying, or ruminating. And the other popular thing, and I've got a little handout on this, which I'd be happy to send through to you, is the idea that if you worry a lot, you put aside 5 to 15 minutes each day at a specified time, during which you do nothing but sit down and allow yourself to worry. For the rest of the day, when a worry pops up, you say to yourself, not going to worry about this now, I'll do it in my worry time. And this has been a really, really useful strategy that I've used. I had a experience last year where I had a son that was misbehaving, and I basically got myself into a little frenzy about it. And then I thought, right, I'm going to put aside some time at the end of the day and I'm going to worry about it in that time. So I set the time aside and I really allowed myself to worry. And I did that for about 3 or 4 days. And during that time, I did write a little bit, I journaled, and I felt that the easing of it as I was able to actually really experience that worry. So I've got a good handout with this. And you can also say, so when worries pop up, say to yourself, thanks, mind. I know you're trying to help, and I'll tackle this later in my worry time. But now I have to focus on other things. So by all means, keep generating those worries, but just know that I can give them my attention. I can't give them my attention right now. And then when you get to the worry time, don't passively sit there and allow yourself to worry. Instead, respond to your worries effectively. Either practice observing the flow of your worries or getting in and out of the river, or tease out values from beneath the worries and use them to create an action plan. So these are just some of the things that you can do to actually help yourself when you're going through these situations. Now I've got the kindness exercise here now. And this is actually a short meditation that I'd like to run you through just before we end up tonight. So this is a loving kindness meditation. And I want you to begin by finding a comfortable position. And I want you to take a few deep breaths, just in and out through your nose. And I want you to bring your awareness to the sensations around your heart area. As you focus, allow the sensations to be as they are, with an attitude of openness interests, and receptiveness. Connecting with the feelings of loving kindness. Next, think of a person who's been very kind and loving towards you. Reflect on what they've done for you and why you're grateful for them. Remember a specific act they did that was very loving or kind or caring, and remember how it felt. Now imagine yourself radiating warm feelings of love, friendliness, kindness, generosity towards that person. As you do that, hold that person in your mind and slowly and silently repeat the phrases below. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you be content. May you experience love. May you experience kindness. May your life be rich and full and meaningful. As you say them, feel the meaning of the words and radiate feelings of warmth, love, kindness, and tenderness to this person. Next, I want you to think about yourself and the pain that you've experienced and radiate these same warm feelings towards yourself while you say the same phrases slowly and gently. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. May I be content. May I experience love. May I experience kindness. May my life be rich and full and meaningful. As you say them, feeling the meaning of the words and radiate feelings of warmth, love and kindness and tenderness throughout your body, completely accepting every aspect of yourself. And if your mind makes negative judgments or comments during the process, just let them come and go, like passing cars or silently saying, "Thanks, mind." And I just want you to come back into the room with me. And the next little thing I'm going to show you is the kind hand. Now you can do a lot of self-soothing with your own hands. As you can see, even with a loving kindness meditation, just by saying those kind words, you're actually being compassionate with yourself. And with a kind hand, you can put your hands out in front of you and you can allow them to be, you can almost have a vision of them filling up with kindness or kind thoughts. And then you can actually bring them towards you and place them over your chest, over your heart. The other thing that you can do with your hands is to gently stroke down your arms, just down the tops of your arms, just giving yourself a nice self-soothing arm rub. These are all ways of actually allowing yourself to be a lot kinder and softer to yourself. One more thing. Next is I've got opening up. So the feelings that bothers you the most. Now find a feeling that bothers you the most and observe it like a curious child. Where is it located? Is it at the surface, or is it deep inside? What is the size and shape of it? Are its borders well defined or vague and fuzzy? And what's the temperature of this feeling? Can you notice any hot spots or cold spots within it? Is it moving or is it still, light, heavy, or weightless? And can you notice any other sensations within it, vibrating, tingling, or throbbing? Now, slowly and gently breathe into that feeling with an attitude of warmth and kindness. Imagine your breath flowing into it and around this pain or numbness. Imagine, in some magical way, a vast space opens up inside you, making plenty of room for this difficult feeling. No matter how unwanted this feeling may be, do not fight with it. Step out of the battle instead. Make peace with it. These are all really, really simple things. The holding yourself kindly fits again with the kindness with your hands. Imagine it's the hand of someone very kind and caring, and place his hand slowly and gently either on your heart or on that feeling. Okay. And then lastly, speak kindly. If you're not sure what to say to yourself, this is difficult. Hold yourself kindly. Or you might say, this is difficult and I can do this. If you failed or made a mistake, then you might like to remind yourself, yes, I'm human. Like everybody else on the planet, I fail and make mistakes. Acknowledge that your pain tells you something very important. It tells you that you have a heart, that you care, and that you've lost something or someone that really matters to you. And this is what all humans feel in the face of great loss. It's not a sign of weakness or of something wrong with you. It's a sign that you are living, caring, that you're a living, caring being. And it's something you have in common with every living, caring being on the planet. So lastly, these are the final words. And yes, Elisabeth Kübler-Ross is coming up again. The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. Just going to stop the recording.